Well, bad news, unfortunately, but first, the date stamp on this Style 5 movement is February of 1948, and you can see the blued steel alarm bridge that's used on it versus the brass bridge used on this 1939 movement. And so this movement would have probably had a brass barrel bridge originally, like this one here. But even though this movement is noticeably cleaner than this one, much less corrosion and etc., it just doesn't want to run. It just barely wants to do anything. And you know, I can do the old trick here, and that's get a little bit of extra gas, and you can see it wants to run. And try to see how little it takes to make it operate. But even then, you see it's not the balance wheel isn't, you know, if I put quite a bit of pressure on there, you can see the balance wheel flicks way out. But just light pressure, like it would be if it was running, it just barely wants to do anything. And it's probably so dirty that it's not going to do anything anyway. It just doesn't look that dirty. The pivots on the lever don't seem that worn. They're not as worn as they are on this newer movement, I don't think. And I was looking at it through the enlargement and with the camera here, and it didn't seem like these were that worn. So this movement might respond real well to just a simple cleaning. But it's a parts movement, though. I mean, I don't have a good case to put it in right now. I'm sort of short on those. I would much rather possibly do something with this movement. The clock that it came in, the only thing that was really wrong with it was the glass had been broken at some time, and so it didn't really have a protection over the dial anymore. This is the dial off of that Style 5 clock that's pretty badly yellowed, but you know, I could peel that off and put a new dial on it, and then I would have a non-luminous Style 5 to go with my luminous Style 5, although this one here has got some issues too. It looks like there's some mold growing on the dial. But you can see the difference in a Style 5 versus a Style 5A, how much thicker the cases are. And of course, a Style 5 case is the same size as a Style 5 chime alarm case. You see it's the same depth. Uses the same bell stamping, basically, but with just different locations for the holes and the markings, but the basic shape of the bell is the same. And they did change some things on these. The keys are basically I mean, the knobs are basically the knobs like what are on a baby Ben, except a little bit larger. They're the same, really the same diameter. They're just a little bit longer. And the winding keys have been modernized a little bit. Instead of the nice, you know, large keys like these that are formed from a channel-shaped piece of stamped sheet metal, they're these single flat keys, like what they're used on the baby Bens, but obviously larger. And these are the same keys that are used on the Style 6 clocks. And unfortunately, Unfortunately, this movement will not interchange directly with the Style 6 movements because the setting knob, the on-off knob, is in a different location. On the Style 6s, it's up here, and on the Style 5s, it's down here, which is a real pity because this movement's a lot easier to disassemble because this just unscrews like it does on the older movement, and then this is just a staked on with a split knob. With the Style 6 movements, they started to make things a little bit less disassemblable, but there's a lot of similarity between the movements. Otherwise, as you can see, it's got that dished front plate there so that all that can be sunk down, and this is the minute hand was broken off on this clock. It had a good hour and alarm hand, but the minute hand was broken off because the glass was broken. So it might be an interesting project at some point to see if this can be cleaned up very well. You can also see some other changes that happened. The repeat lever lost its tail that is a remnant of the old Style 1 and 1A clocks, where it had the repeat steady switch on the case. But I guess I'm going to let this spring down and put this all back on the other movement since it does kind of run. And this is just going to live on as a... I'm not going to disassemble this, and it's easier to keep the movement all assembled and keep all the little parts together until I need them than to have them all separated out and rolling around in a drawer. Always check it. And yes, that is a cuckoo clock you hear chiming in the background. Don't know really why I'm bothering to film all this continue still. It's just kind of fun to do, I guess. What did you watch on YouTube today? Oh, I watched some fellow work on his West clocks. Oh, how'd that go? You know, he took a movement apart, swapped some pieces around. It's nice how they'll just sit upright on the table like that when the bridges are out, when the great wheels are out of them. I already have quite a few Style 5A clocks as it is. I don't know if I've bothered to count how many complete clocks I've got. I think I've got five of them. I don't have any Style 5 loud alarms at all. I've got one Style 5 chime alarm, but I don't have any Style 5 loud alarms. All my Style 5 loud alarms are 5As. This would be nice to have these. The Style 5 loud alarms are just a little bit... That might be the wrong screw. The Style 5 loud alarms are just a little bit less common than the 5As. They weren't made as long. Look at that. I know I was wiggling it a little bit, but it did start up real nice on its own. Let's put this in the holder here. Let it settle down a little bit, and let's see how it runs. it did run. It did run until the mainspring wound down. And the mainspring was a little bit tighter when it was wound down than it would be if the clock had been serviced. And so it is running. It would run for at least long enough to wake you up in the morning, but I'm not sure I would trust it reliably with the balance wheel only moving that much. If you recall how much it moved in the slow motion video I took of this movement running. Dispense with that for now. But keep this in mind, when you do buy that treasured clock off of eBay or for some antique dealer somewhere, that chances are this is what it's going to look like inside. That, oh yeah, it runs perfectly well. You know, this, I mean, look at how much the impulse pin is coming out of the lever, just barely. I mean, yeah, that balance is flicking pretty strong, but you can see it's not moving very far. There's not a lot of power getting transmitted to that balance wheel. And a cleaning, this would respond to a cleaning real well, but you're still not going to get that real nice motion until these pivots for the lever are probably have bushings installed, because there's so much lost motion there. All that lost motion from, you see that pivot? You see this one especially, how much that pivot's bouncing up and down in its hole. So that's all energy that's being wasted, that's not going into the balance wheel. It's being wasted making that pivot bounce up and down. And I see that the camera is wanting to focus on the fourth wheel and not the pivot. Oh, you see how dirty it is? This is just nasty. Surprised it still runs though. Isn't that amazing? I mean, the other movement was so much cleaner looking and didn't want to run at all. And this one here just looks horrible, and it runs just fine. So I don't know what to call this little two-part video series. 3 parts, really, because of the slow-mo, too. Dirty movement detour. I mean, this is worth doing a slow motion of right here. I really don't think I'm doing anything other than just playing around with it now, so I better cut the video off. But if you followed along, I salute you. Your penny is in the mail. Anyway, this is Oklahoma Bridges, and as always, thank you for watching. End the video with a little bit of escapement action here, so I can get it all in frame.